million a year into the UN Secretariat in New York. We put about another, I would guess, probably close to about $3 billion into the whole UN system. But the United States is the biggest recipient of UN services. We earn more off of the United Nations than we put into it. The city of New York alone earns $3.2 billion, B with a billion with a B, on what diplomats spend in New York. The UN in New York is the third largest employer. Stop and think about the International Civil Aviation Organization. We put a very small amount, a couple $1 million into that agency. But think about our airlines, Delta, United, Continental, how they benefit from these UN services, and how by bringing the countries of the world together to hammer out these international agreements, it saves these airlines hundreds of millions of dollars every year that they wouldn't have to spend on drafting bilateral agreements and arrangements with airlines in other countries.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Very small, I mean, it's just one of the UN agencies, but when you stop and go through every United Nations agency, we earn more off of the UN than we put into the UN. And it's in our best interest to be actively involved in the United Nations, because we've got to deal with these international problems, and if we don't help set the agenda, somebody else will be setting it, and it may not work to our advantage.
Well, as you know, a number of people are criticizing the U.S. acting unilaterally regarding the war in Iraq, and are saying that we absolutely ignored the United Nations in this manner. So how would you address those concerns?
Well, we did, but we didn't. We went to the UN at one point. You may recall that President Bush had indicated that he was going to act unilaterally to take out Saddam Hussein. That's basically one of the motivations. But we said we were going into Iraq, first off, to eliminate the weapons of mass destruction, because we thought at that time that he had them. And also, we thought he was an immediate threat. Well, we've come to find out that he was not an immediate threat, and it doesn't look like he's got weapons or had weapons of mass destruction. Now, the Bush administration did go to the United Nations because the American public, the polls showed overwhelmingly that up to 85% of the American public wanted the U.S. to work through the Security Council and to resolve this problem peacefully. Tony Blair, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, said, I have to go to the UN. We have to go to the UN, which the Bush administration did, got Security Council Resolution 1441, and that basically gave the UN the opportunity to get those international inspectors back into Iraq. Okay. So we did use them, but then we didn't go back to the UN to try to get the UN Security Council to support us to go to war in Iraq, because the majority of the members, Chile, many of the others included, did not believe that Iraq was an immediate threat and did not feel that war was the way to go. And so we did not go back, and we did it unilaterally with the United Kingdom, Australia, and about 28 very weak countries.
Small countries. So right now the U.S. Is suffering for what many consider diplomatic demise in the terms of the relations with the rest of the world. And you know, in your role, both in Rotary and in the United Nations Association, how do you think that the U.S.'s relations with the rest of the world is affected at this point?
Well, the United States is still the most important player at the United Nations. Even with what's gone on, we are still the #1 country at the UN, given our huge economic size, our strength, that type of thing, our huge military. So we're a very important player. But as far as how the United States is perceived around the world, it's very disturbing. In the 35 years I've been monitoring world opinion, I have never seen the United States standing so low. And I'm not talking about the people of the United States, I'm talking about the U.S. foreign policies, that it's not only in the Middle East where we are not well respected, but even in Latin America. You look at the polls that come out of Latin America or out of Asia, and the United States is really at its lowest point in my memory, and perhaps in the last, I won't say 200 years, but it's something that we need to work on, but it's going to have to be done in conjunction with these other countries, or we're going to have a terrible time trying to extricate ourselves from Iraq.
Sure. And as Rotary District Governor, or perhaps in your role with the United Nations Association, are you pursuing any efforts to restore U.S. relationships?
Well, not so much as the Rotary Governor, because we're apolitical, we're non-political, as is the United Nations Association of the United States of America. We have Democrats, Republicans, Independents who are involved in both of these organizations. But what we try to do is to again, provide service above self, improve the quality of life for the people in our communities and that type of thing. And with UNA USA, we, again, try to help inform the American public about how important it is to be involved in these international issues and to learn about what's happening.
So perhaps you're not working on a political level, but perhaps on a humanitarian level that then
educational
filters.
level. That's correct, yes.
So what are some of the humanitarian efforts that Rotary is pursuing? For example, are you guys doing anything in the Middle East at this point in time?
Well, Rotary is, and one thing that we're involved in every country of the world, and perhaps not as much right now because we've been very successful, but Rotarians have committed over $600 million to this Polio Plus program. They've opened up their hearts and their pocketbooks to a very large amount of money, but there have been tens of thousands of Rotarians on the ground, we call them boots on the ground if you would like, who have gone and have immunized children around the world. And now we've gotten polio localized to about 6 countries, Nigeria, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and a few other countries.
Wow.
And it has been a phenomenal program. So Rotary True is working in many, many countries of the world in a wide range of areas with UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, with the UN High Commission for Refugees, with the Polio Plus program, and other activities.
Very quickly, in your capacity as an international specialist, if you had the opportunity to address the U.S. Congress, what would you want to say?
Well, I would just encourage the U.S. Congress to continue or to be more supportive of the United Nations, because we're living in truly an interdependent world, a multipolar world where you cannot make unilateral decisions. You have to work with these other countries. That's the only way we can defeat terrorism, overcome drug abuse, move ships, planes, aircraft, mail safely around the world. And we are still the only superpower, and we have to cooperate with other countries.
Thank you. Thank you, and stay tuned for more with Miami's Global Connections.
The jungle, king of the apes, father of boy. He knows what it takes to be a dad. You go for a ride, you take a swim, you hang out. All it takes is time. Hey, it doesn't take a hero, but it takes a man to be a dad.
Welcome back to Miami's Global Connection. I'm Whitney Belker. Today we discuss the United Nations and the work of Rotary International. I would like to thank my very special guest, Bill Miller. For more information on these organizations or on how you can become a volunteer, please visit the websites on your screen. The sponsor of our show is the United Nations Association, dedicated to promoting the ideals of democracy, education, healthcare, human rights, and peacekeeping. We've touched on a number of interesting topics today, and I hope our show will encourage you to become more informed and get involved in promoting world peace and understanding through local and global service projects. Please stay tuned for our next program. Again, this was a very interesting segment for us. We have Bill Miller here, and we are so appreciative that he took the time to share many of his insights on the United Nations Association and on Rotary International. I'm Whitney Belker, and this is Miami's Global Connection.